New York Times critic Janet Maslin praised it as a good-natured, hot-weather comedy. Frederick and Marianne Broussard of Spirituality and Practice said it was a mediocre, predictable comedy. And Paul Attanasio of The Washington Post called it the kind of movie that could make you wish you had poison ivy. At least the scratching would occupy your mind. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we determine the fate of Summer Rental.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
The Ruined Childhoods Podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to Ruined Childhoods, the podcast where we talk about the classic movies that we've all grown up with and the franchises that have been built out of them and Hollywood's tendency to revisit these every now and again. And you get to hear our, I guess, collective 4 cents about what should happen. My 2 cents and the 2 cents contributed by John.
Hey,
hi, John.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear about the Shaft series of movies, listen to the last episode. Just saying. Dan talks about Shaft a lot.
There is a
we're not going to talk so much about Shaft on this episode. If you want the Shaft POV of Dan, then check out the last episode, not this one.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? I was in Europe and the new Shaft was streaming on Netflix, and who am I to pass up an opportunity? And you know what? I didn't think we'd have another window of opportunity. So there, enjoy. If you want a little Shaft sidebar, last episode.
Yeah.
Check it out.
But on this episode, we're gonna get right into it, I think, pretty quickly, because as far as I could tell, there's really not much going on in the news of reboots and remakes and sequels and prequels and what have yous. I've seen lots of adaptation stuff, but we're not an adaptation podcast.
Well, it depends.
Unless we talk about the movie adaptation, in which case, we will be an adaptation podcast.
Well, and I'd like to speak to that for a moment, because recently we were, Edgar Wright was doing a little Twitter Q&A and was asked if he could remake any movie, what would he remake? And he said The Running Man. Yeah. And I know we're both big fans of The Running Man, 1987,
and Edgar Wright,
Arnold Schwarzenegger, and also both big fans of Edgar Wright. And my question was, is this a remake of the movie, or is it a readaptation of Stephen King, writing as Richard Bachman, his novel that the movie was based on, but it's kind of a loose adaptation?
Well, anyway, regardless of all of that, Edgar Wright did say in follow-up tweets that he has looked into it and there's just too much red tape. So it is never likely to happen. So,
and is there a need for it? I mean, I think Running Man, and we'll talk about Running Man another time, but I think there's a lot about Running Man that really relates to our world today. And it is also set in 2017.
Right.
So it's not entirely a bad idea, but it seems like whether or not it's a good idea is kind of a moot point. So,
yeah.
So
but aside from that, I don't think that there's really much going on.
Got a little more information on Rambo Last Blood, that Rambo is working down by the border as a migrant worker and will be facing off against a Mexican cartel. And I guess Stallone's been really into the whole immigration issue, because he also in an interview said that he was cooking up a new addition to the Rocky franchise, not Creed 3, but this would be a like Rocky 7.
Yeah.
and that it would involve him taking under his wing an undocumented immigrant, I assume, in Philadelphia.
Interesting. So, I mean, I was going to ask you where Stallone stands on this issue, but it seems like he is in favor of, or I should say, not in favor of putting people in cages.
Well, yeah. I mean,
unless we're talking about in the ring in an octagon of sorts.
Yes.
A cage match.
Or in Demolition Man. In a cage of liquid goo, ice, freeze. Anyhow, Stallone, I think he's kind of, whereas I think politically he's definitely shown some leanings. He's been known to say that he really prefers to kind of stay out of it, whereas Arnold, because I guess we're talking about one, we have to talk about both. Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, was governor of California. So
right, but in a very different Republican Party than what exists now.
Yes, well, but that is neither. Well, it's not here. It's there.
We can talk about these things. That's just talking about facts. We're not sharing our own opinions. We're just discussing the things that are out there that are public information. Yes, I guess so. But
so Stallone was quoted on saying that he kind of considers himself to be apolitical, but I think as far as human rights goes, either he has an opinion and is using his art to make a statement on that, or he just sees a good opportunity for Rambo and for Rocky to interact with these issues. But then human rights were also a focus of Rambo, the fourth Rambo film, the genocide in Burma.
Right. Yeah. Sylvester Stallone, you're a complex
else?
gentleman.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to Kelly McGillis. So I was reading some interviews. She was doing some interviews on Top Gun Maverick and kind of was just straight up and said, hey, they didn't invite me back, probably because I'm like 63 and I'm fat and I understand why they didn't invite me back. So whatever, that's great. Hooray for Top Gun 2.
Oh boy.
But she wasn't. No, she didn't see. I'm adding the bitterness. She did not. I mean, I didn't hear the interview. I just read it, but she did not seem bitter. She just kind of seemed like, hey, this is the industry I work in, where in 1986 I can play romantically opposite Tom Cruise, and we've both aged the same amount since then. But yeah.
And okay, I say what you will about Scientology, and I certainly have my own thoughts on it. But if Scientology is responsible for Tom Cruise being the way that he is today, then that aspect of it I'm okay with, because that guy just keeps on getting better, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and what is it's like he takes it, I guess he takes it easy with movies like Top Gun, and then he does these Mission Impossible movies and there's all these incredible stunts, and you're like, oh, that had to be, digital. Nope, that was real. It's like, oh wow, who's his stuntman? Nope, no stuntman.
Tom Cruise is his stuntman.
That was Tom Cruise. That was it. And you're just like, what the hell? And then Tom Cruise is just like, hey man, Scientology.
Well, so just going back to the Kelly McGillis news bit, the one thing,
just her commentary.
Yeah. And the one thing that bothered me about that news is that the one article that I did see about it, the headline was like, Tom Cruise's girlfriend from Top Gun. And it's just like, she has a name. Use her name.
She was his goddamn instructor.
Yeah.
She was his superior in that.
Also, she was awesome in Top Gun.
She was awesome in Top Gun. But, and you know, I'll share a little, I guess not reboot news, but kind of readaptation news of my own. I'm just kind of excited about it. Well, okay. So, as many of you know, I teach at high school in the Seattle area, and I also direct their fall play. And I'm excited because I'm doing A Few Good Men, directing Aaron Sorkin's A Few Good Men.
Dan, like I said, we don't talk about adaptations on here. So if you want to talk about your plays, start a different podcast. I'm just kidding. I'm very excited for you.
I'm excited. No, I'm excited about it because I'm as we would discuss if it was being remade and there were some changes being made, or we were suggesting changes to be made. I'm making some changes that actually for me were things that were obstacles whenever I would think about, okay, well, how could I, first of all, pull this off anywhere without people just kind of having the movie in their head. And especially you've got the iconic, "You Can't Handle the Truth." And my thought was it takes on a whole different energy if you have a character whose like their MO is to remain calm, cool, and collected, as if you have rather than Commander Jessup, who was, famously played by Jack Nicholson. If Commander Jessup is played by a woman who has struggled against stereotypes to rise in power. Also, if this is not set in, we're not setting it today. I'm planning on setting mine in the 90s. The play's originally set in the 80s. But if you have a woman, I was inspired by an interview I heard with Julia Louis-Dreyfus on Pod Save America, where she talked about the role of Selena Meyer and how in order to succeed in this male-dominated world, she had to become more of a misogynist than the men. And it's in that last season, she does the whole man up thing. She talked about how Selena from her childhood was just kind of had learned to hate or have a distaste for femininity, except for when it's convenient, or not femininity, but to appear quote unquote womanly and emotional and out of control.
Right.
So I thought about that in terms of Jessup and the build kind of to that line when he loses it. And I'm like, if you just have this Stone, you've got imagine a Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, just kind of that cold, calculated, cool, calm, collected, that you're not going to rattle me no matter what attitude. I think it takes it in a direction where I hope an audience will not be sitting there thinking wait a second, it's you can't handle the truth. So, and that's just kind of an example, but I feel like it kind of fits in with what we talk about in terms of movies. And I think what we'll talk about a little bit today with Summer Rental.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about A Few Good Men, we got John Candy, Rip Torn, Richard Crenna, and Carl Reiner.
And John Larroquette. I mean, very small role, but still. Yeah.
Summer Rental.
Thank you for indulging me.
My recollection of Summer Rental was very limited. And I mean, I hadn't probably seen it in close to 30 years. And what I did remember was, all of the gross people walking past their little summer rental, and John Candy getting very sunburnt. Those are the two things. And saying, oh my God, is it Noxema? The cream? No, it's not. What's the name of the cream that he keeps on putting on his sunburn.
Is it Noxema?
I don't remember. Anyway, there's something about that like triggered, like hearing him say it again, like triggered me. Like, oh yeah, I remember this like very vividly. But there were certainly things that were kind of fresh to me that I certainly didn't catch when I was a child, like the next door neighbor who is showing off her breast implants by and always opening up the conversation with being like, you must have very good vision. And
she, whatever it is they do. Oh, you're an air traffic controller. Oh, so you must have, it's your job. You have to have I have to say the payoff for that gag with the judge at the end is it's pretty good. It's a pretty solid gag.
And I feel like it's done in the most tasteful way it possibly could have been done.
It's harm. I mean, well, the husband is just like, oh, again. All right. Did you tell her they're perfect? They're perfect. Okay. Geez. What was it that he like, I could have had a power tool.
Yeah. Chainsaw. Yeah. So
not to be confused with Chainsaw in Summer School.
In Summer School, yeah. So I really enjoyed watching Summer Rental. I watched it yesterday, and there were certain things about it where I thought that it had room for improvement. I feel like the whole first part of it where they go to the wrong house, it's like, it's funny, but it doesn't drive the story really forward all that well. They could have just rolled up to like the dinky little shack, at the beginning.
The funniest part, the best part of that is the buildup, and this is the Carl Reiner, of course, is a master of this, building up a gag, and just like the dog asleep as all this is going on with the family coming in and they're moving out, and may I add, I was like, man, he's kind of a jackass, John Candy's character.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, not incredibly apologetic, and then spills all the dog food, and it's just like, oh, all right, it's their mess now.
And another thing is, like, he is a jackass up until the very end.
Well, yeah, and definitely come back. I definitely want to. His arc is, I think, what makes the movie still relevant. But
sure.
But before we get into that, I as well had a lot of memories of this movie. I've probably seen it more recently than you. I don't remember the last time I saw it. It was probably like on demand, and it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, I'll put, like, it's just one of those, you get home from camp over the summer, you get home from the pool and there's a thunderstorm, so you're just looking whatever's on HBO, and oh, okay, great, Summer Rental. It's like, I don't remember the first time I saw it, but I can almost guarantee you it was like a summer day, and it was like on HBO. I don't remember like renting it. And for anyone who's listened to the show enough, like I'd probably remember it.
Yeah, it's true.
So, but I don't have much of a recollection. It opened in August 1985. And opened at number 2, because Back to the Future was the number 1 movie every weekend, that whole summer. And it actually opened against a few cult classics, Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Real Genius.
Wow.
And actually opened 1 week after the very first movie that you, John, saw in the movie theater, Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird.
Follow That Bird, baby.
Now, because I doubt we'll devote an entire episode to Follow That Bird, I will tell you I do remember seeing that at the Westfield Rialto. I believe we saw it back when the Westfield Rialto only had 3 screens, and one of the screens was like upstairs, and it was cool. Like, I saw Exorcist 3 there. I saw a lot of great movies. I don't know why Exorcist 3 was the one that popped into my head as I'm talking about Follow That Bird, but Yeah, I do remember us going to see that, and I can only imagine Summer Rental could have been playing at one of the other screens.
Very true. Very true.
But I definitely like the John Candy sunburn. It's just so uncomfortable to see him like sunburned in the cast, and that has so like stuck with me.
I think that one of the reasons why I never revisited this movie is because there's something about his name is Jack Chester in the movie, John Candy's character. He's so unlikable for 90% of the movie that, you know, he doesn't have that quality that makes you want to keep watching him again, the same way that, you know, in Spaceballs when he played Barf, you know, it's like you love that character. You want to see him over and over again. And even some of his, what's up?
Or a movie that's very comparable to this, The Great Outdoors. He plays the character Chet Ripley, who's much more, he like the well-meaning family man trope. He's like, in The Great Outdoors, he's much more likable. Of course, you've got Dan Aykroyd taking all of the unlikability that there needs to be.
Yeah. And
in a great way.
And just a brief synopsis of Summer Rental. Jack Chester is, as we mentioned, an air traffic controller who is completely burnt out. And he is kind of making some not fatal mistakes, but just like weirdo mistakes that, you know, are just
a little careless.
Just careless, but everybody, no crashes happen. Don't worry. And his boss forces him to go take a vacation and sets him up with a summer rental house in Florida. And as we mentioned, first they, you know, go to this one house and it seems perfect. It's this beautiful house right on the beach. It looks like a postcard, they say. And it turns out that that's someone else's house. They end up at this tiny little dinky shack that has flies everywhere. It's right in front of the public beach access. So that's where everybody is passing through. The beach is super crowded. They encounter this guy named Scully, who is he looks like a pirate and he talks like a pirate and he has a hook for a hand and he owns this seafood restaurant. And I'm saying that kind of with quotes, called the Barnacle, I believe. The Barnacle, yeah. The Barnacle. And they end up there because they are set on going to this really fancy restaurant to have lobster. But when they finally get to the front of the like wait for everything, Richard Crenna, Al Pellet, comes in and he's kind of the hot shot in town. And he's like super rich. He owns a bunch of stuff and he wins the annual regatta all the time.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I didn't make the connection until now, but he's kind of just like the comedic. It would be funny if in some cinematic universe, Al Pellet is related to Ben Gazzara's character in Roadhouse.
Oh, yeah. He also reminds me of like RJ Fletcher from UHF.
Yeah, RJ Fletcher from UHF. And I mean, it's you know, he's that
great actors who are so good at playing these like smarmy rich people. And credit to Richard Crenna. So funny. He plays this character so perfectly. It's so great. There's a scene when he's signing the deed to the rental house where they're at when the owner dies, and he's signing it on top of the cat. He closes the casket at the funeral to sign on top of it, and it's so perfect. I love it.
Wait, and doesn't he put something in? What does he put in the casket after? Oh, doesn't it when he? Is that when he gets the other check?
When he gets the other check.
Is that when John Candy comes in? He
brings him the check for the rent and he rips it up.
At the funeral home.
Yeah, at the funeral home.
He rips it up and puts it in the casket.
Oh, does he? I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I think so.
So John Candy's character makes this whole scene when Al Pellet comes in and takes the table that he's supposed to get, and he buys all of the rest of the lobster that's there. So John Candy flips out. They just have this vendetta against each other the whole time. And, it's just kind of a series of John Candy becoming friendly with Scully, Rip Torn's character, who's so good. And it was so wonderful to watch the late and truly great Rip Torn play a character that's kind of different. I mean, I'm so used to seeing him in Suits. You know what I mean?
Right. Larry Sanders, yeah.
Larry Sanders on 30 Rock. Like
Defending Your Life.
Defending Your Life. Oh my God. So good in Defending Your Life. And in this, he's kind of a pirate seafood restaurateur.
Oh, well, it's funny because first of all, and I cannot think of or say the word horseshit without thinking of Rip Torn. And whether it was in Defending Your Life or as Artie on Larry Sanders' show, but he would horseshit.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it's like how Samuel L. Jackson kind of owns motherfucker.
Yeah.
Rip Torn will forever own horseshit.
He's just so good and he's so likable. And when you see him like smiling and having a good time and forging this friendship with John Candy's character, it's just like, you want to see more and more and more of that. So I think that Rip Torn really is like the reason to watch this movie, because I feel like in his capable hands, John Candy is able to kind of make that turn in his character arc, which it's not so much of an arc, because an arc you kind of imagine peaking in the, just kind of like having a progression, having a steady crescendo. But this is kind of like it's a flat lines and then spikes up, because because Jack is still kind of a jerk to his family and is essentially doing all this stuff with Scully in secret.
Yes, right. And they're going out there with John LaRoquette's character and
sure. Yeah, Don.
Who's really not. Yeah, Don, and he's not as. At first, you kind of think he's going to be like really smarmy and
right.
He's harmless, but yeah. So I mean, Summer Rental. So it kind of fits into those really 80s specific genres of the snobs versus slobs.
Well,
slobs versus snobs.
Yeah, I mean the crescendo of the movie, the climax of the movie is at the annual regatta that, John Candy is in with his whole family and everybody's getting along and working together and having a great time.
Yeah. And winning a regatta that's how you settled a feud
in the 80s,
back in the mid 80s. And if your initials were JC, so if you're John Candy or John Cusack, in One Crazy Summer, you're winning that regatta.
Man, do we have to write a movie set in the 80s starring Jesus Christ? And he wins a regatta.
Yeah. He would star?
Sure. I don't know. What's he up to?
I mean, he came out of retirement once, right?
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, can I just, before we move on from the original, the score is so, I feel like I've heard it in so many different
oh yeah.
It's like, is this the score from Baby Boom? Is this the score from I don't know, like Gung Ho or?
It's extremely familiar, but speaking of scores, I mean, Axel F plays a prominent role in this movie.
Yeah, a little. Well, hey, man, Paramount, help a brother out. Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop. So here's an interesting thing I noticed. When she's got her headset on, she's got her headphones on. I guess it's when they're at the movie theater or whatever. I don't know. And the other kid,
the daughter,
is Greg. Yeah, the daughter. So played by Kerry Green
from Goonies.
and yeah, absolutely. The Goonies, Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy's like, hey, what are you listening to? And of course, they're both listening to the radio. And she goes, wham, like 101.3.
Yeah.
And the song is Footloose.
I noticed that too. And I was like, do they expect that no one's going to notice? Did they not get the rights to use the Wham song? Which, by the way, there's a Footloose poster right behind them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but come on, like we know just what is it not cool to say Loggins? Loggins 101.4.
Yeah. Got to get your logins on.
Absolutely. Log in and logins.
Okay. So
log out. What are we going to do with this one, John?
Well, I mean, there's really no prequel to speak of unless you just want to see a movie about an air traffic controller, which maybe.
Pushing Tin, been there, done that. John Cusack.
Yeah, there you go. John Cusack coming up again. You can't do a sequel unless you have a story with Joey Lawrence's character. He plays the son, but
whoa,
I don't think that anybody. Whoa, indeed, I don't think that anybody really cares to see that, or there's really much of a story to tell. Unless
it's just an episode of Melissa and Joey.
Oh boy, and no one wants to see that. And
does that still exist?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
This is Melissa Joan Hart show. I think that ended like 10 years ago. I don't know. But this certainly could be for a remake. And
yeah,
I mean, it's a pretty simple story. It's not like it hasn't been done other times, just in slightly different ways. But if we were to actually do a true remake, I would probably, and this is not somebody who I typically would want to, I don't know, remake movies, but I'd go for Adam Sandler. Because, he can certainly be likable. He can be a grouch. He can be kind of schlubby and lazy, but he can certainly make you feel for those redemptive moments. I would want to reunite him for the fourth time with Drew Barrymore as his wife. And I would... What's up?
Can I ask?
What?
Rob Schneider as Scully?
No. Definitely not.
Okay.
Steve
Where's
Buscemi.
Rob Schneider going to be?
Steve
Buscemi is Scully. All right.
Steve Buscemi as Scully. Rob Schneider... he could just be one of the beachgoers. I don't know.
Rob Schneider's got it. Nope. I got it. Rob Schneider is going to be at the regatta doing "You Can Do It."
Oh yeah, that's the one time he shows up. And then for the Al Pellet role, I had a few different thoughts. My first thought was Kevin Bacon, which would be a nod to the Footloose references. We could also have Oscar Isaac, because we are listening to Ruined Childhoods. And also because you're listening to Ruined Childhoods, it could be Michael Shannon. Those are my top three for the Al Pellet role. And because this is an Adam Sandler movie, the next door neighbor with the implants, Cloris Leachman.
Oh.
Because you can't just have it be like a straightforward, obvious thing. It's got to be like old lady.
Yeah.
And she can get really filthy and have fun with it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Beer Fest.
Very much so.
I mean, among others, but yeah. So I was thinking the same. I was definitely thinking remake. I was actually thinking, because I think one of the questions we ask, or one of the questions I ask, is like, why remake this? Like, what's the purpose? And I was thinking about that kind of that arc that Jack goes through, and I'm going to call it an arc. But you think about all the factors that lead to him becoming a happier, more connected, more engaged person. And you think about what he does for a living. He sits in a room all day staring at screens. Now, you set that in today's world, you not only have the dad staring at screens all day, you've got the kids who are, you know, of course, with phones and games and everything, they're staring at screens. You know, it's everybody. And if you were to kind of take the same satirical approach, whereas like Carl Reiner had the beach was comically overcrowded. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know that a beach is ever quite that. I've ever been to a beach quite as crowded as the one in Summer Rental. I think it's mostly comedic, but I think that this could say a lot for depression. Mm-hmm. and kind of what, you know, there's some real science and as to how like screen, I don't want to call it screen addiction, but, you know, constantly being on your phone or constantly, or especially like with social media and not just using it, but just like obsessively doing that leads to depression. You've got the famous, you know, FOMO, fear of missing out, mm-hmm. That can lead to depression and, you know, mental health problems. So if you have Jack as this person who's just tired and burnt out, maybe he's taking antidepressants, maybe he's, you know, whatever he's
like
doing,
he wouldn't be taking antidepressants.
Well, yeah, or maybe he's taking something, but he's not taking what he should be taking. I don't know. He's not like he's not exercising. He's not, you know, he's not outdoors, and he really doesn't like want to engage with anyone at the beginning of the movie. So I think, and also he's got like, there's a body image subplot that they tap into a little bit in the original, but I think you could work with that more and have him, you know, he's, you know, got that depression. He's sitting all day. He's snacking. He's, you know, doing whatever. And then he, you know, you could show this effect of how when he's forced to get out from behind the screen and his kids kind of follow his model, and, you know, maybe they're not forced to do it because you try forcing kids off their phones, they will find a way. But like, if you see how he's kind of forced and he gets out there and he gets off social media, and because let's face it, it's not just kids that do that. It's, you know, adults just as much, if not more. And you could see him gain confidence, get into shape. That's why I think not only would you remake this, but you'd have to remake it with an actor or actress who's heavier, who could realistically play a character who's got like body image issues, and have them gain that confidence and this desire to get revenge on this asshole, which it's kind of like, it's a primordial thing. It's in our, you know, it's human nature pushes him. And not only that, but then you throw in, there's a little backstory between Scully and Al Pellet. Al just like had tried to buy out the Barnacle, and Scully wouldn't sell, but there's nothing more to that. And I think if you kind of add tension between them, maybe they used to be partners and Al screwed him over, and maybe that happened in 1985, but whatever it is, that happened. Like, these guys have been feuding before you would just do all your feuds online and, you know, through Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat. So for Jack getting involved and, like, you know, joining this feud, it's kind of a return to, I don't want to say more traditional values, but just a more active, healthier lifestyle, even though he's like seeking vengeance.
Right.
But he's got confidence. And at the end of the original, when they're trying to get when they need more material for the sale, and Jack takes his pants off and puts them up there. And what I liked about that was like, oh, this is this great, like, hey man, I might be fat, but I'm going to own it. And
Right.
I at least feel more confident. I would say you'd have it be the shirt.
Yeah.
And like remake this and have it be I feel like there's a lot more. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like ripping off the shirt shows a greater confidence, and that could honestly work. I think, I was thinking about possible actors to take over the Jack role, and I definitely thought
Before you move on to that, I just want to point out that when you rip off a shirt, you have a torn shirt. That's a rip torn shirt, baby. Who you casting?
I'm just taking a moment for that. All right.
As soon as it said that, everyone hit the like skip 30 seconds button on their app. They're just like, I can't stand this anymore. Get to the end.
No, I'm done. So along the lines of, now, if this was going to be one of your Adam Sandler Netflix productions, perhaps Adam Sandler wouldn't be starring, but maybe Kevin James, who I have as and I'm very, I like Here Comes the Boom. Otherwise, I'm kind of meh on Kevin James. Yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking and yes, that would make sense for the narrative that you're going for.
I have some other.
Yeah. I mean, I intentionally wanted it to be somebody who had a different body type, because then it would maybe seem too much like a John Candy replacement,
Right. Yeah. But thinking about another couple of actors I had down were Jack Black, Danny McBride. I think Danny McBride would actually be...
Danny McBride would be really interesting.
I think Danny McBride would be really funny. And I feel like he's also he's at the right age for it. And I think he could actually pull off... I think he can pull off kind of both ends of the Jack Chester spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about Anthony Anderson a lot.
Really?
So I like his work. I love his work on Blackish. I don't know if he's necessarily big enough to make the body image subplot work, and you kind of sacrifice the sunburn gag. It just wouldn't work as well. Same thing with, I was thinking about like Leslie Jones. I was like some of these scenarios, I was like, oh, Leslie Jones would be Melissa McCarthy. Like, I mean, it's
right.
not, I think Melissa McCarthy could actually be really funny in that role.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I don't think you necessarily need to like do a switch. I was just thinking like, these are really talented actors. I mean actors, actresses, I kind of use it interchangeably, but Melissa McCarthy, this could be a really funny kind of family comedy for her.
Mm-hmm.
It could work, but also I think Danny McBride, it would be kind of something different for him. So I think those
right.
are kind of like my top two.
Okay.
For the
right.
for that role. And so what are your thoughts on the rest of the main cast?
Oh, I already told you.
Oh, you were definite. You had no other.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you had any other thoughts. So, let me run. So I was like, who'd I love to see as Al Pellet? For some reason, the first name that came to mind was George Clooney.
I thought of him too, but I don't know. It just like didn't feel right.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought about George Clooney. I thought about Sigourney Weaver.
Well, Sigourney Weaver has kind of done that character, well, I mean, in going even back to like Working Girl.
That's what I was kind of thinking. Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking was her role in Working Girl.
In kind of similarly in Baby Mama, kind of, she's not like the bad guy, but it's like,
well, it's funny because those were
arrogant,
kind of the two
wealthy
performances
woman
of hers. Those are kind of the two performances of hers that I was thinking of, where I was like, I could see Sigourney Weaver. And then I have a few names. Robert Downey Jr. would be an interesting, funny Al Pellet. And then I have a few names here that I have for both.
You know who would also be good? Gillian Anderson.
Oh, definitely. Definitely Gillian Anderson. I mean, Gillian Anderson's, she's fantastic, but that would be funny. That'd be funny. So I have a few names on here that I actually have for both Scully and Pellet.
Okay.
Kevin Kline, who played in the Pirates of Penzance. So you've got a movie pirate there. Bryan Cranston, I actually think would be great in either role. Yeah. Richard Dreyfuss.
That would be an interesting one.
Michael Douglas.
I don't know.
Maybe more as Scully. I also have Danny DeVito for Scully, but then like Scully, I was thinking about like, Woody Harrelson, Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. And then I was like, damn, I just would love to see like Kevin Kline and Bryan Cranston and just have him flip to see who's going to take which part.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds great.
I mean, and then there's I was like just thinking about like, all right, who are some other movie pirates? And I thought about Alan, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk, thank you.
Yeah.
Who was
played a pseudo. Go on.
But with Rip Torn in Dodgeball,
right,
where he played Pirate Steve, who was a pseudo pirate. But the fact that he co-starred with Rip Torn, I feel like that would just add a nice connective thread. I thought about Johnny Depp. I thought about Gina Davis and Matthew Modine of Cutthroat Island.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Jeffrey
seriously.
Rush and Kurt Russell, a little Captain Ron, Dustin Hoffman.
Going back to Matthew Modine briefly, whenever he is brought up or if I see him in something, all I can ever think about is Jiminy Glick and
my twin sons, Matthew and Modine.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
The fact that his twin sons are named Matthew and Modine is like the funniest thing to me. Like it's the funniest thing I think I've ever heard. And I bet that it's something that he just like said and then immediately forgot about. And then was like, oh yeah, I guess we have to follow up with that.
Have you seen the Jiminy Glick movie?
I thought that was part of the Jiminy Glick movie.
Oh, I thought it was just on his show, but the Jiminy Glick movie, I mean, I haven't seen it in ages, but I remember watching it like on demand at some point and just laughing my ass off. So,
I mean, Martin
Short.
So he's so good. And I feel like I didn't take the time to appreciate Jiminy Glick when it was like happening, but man, what a great character.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Really funny. Yeah. So, I mean, and hey, Martin Short, he's of Captain Ron. Yeah. So maybe, you throw him in there as a Scully or Al Pellet.
Or I'd put Kurt Russell as Al Pellet and then put Martin Short as Scully. Oh. And then it's a little Captain Ron, like role reversal-ish
it's a role
type
reversal.
Of swap. Oh. Yeah. I mean...
Yes.
Captain Ron, I think, is another one that fits into the summer rental category. Boating aside, it's,
probably has the same score. It's a
I am so curious.
Like as
now
we're
I want to watch Captain
like
Ron to see.
As we've got that shot coming in, like over whatever the Florida Keys or the Bahamas, and like they're coming off the plane, like down the ladder, and. So, oh, this is nice. Anyway,
so
you've seen the movie.
Did you have more that you wanted to talk about with your remake stuff? Because there was one thing I wanted to mention, but it's completely off topic.
Well, I was trying to think of directors, and I don't know that you necessarily would need like a name director, someone who like, you know, you just think of off the top of your head, an auteur per se.
Right.
But I was wondering, I was like, man, what if you had Rob Reiner? Like, let's get Rob Reiner to just
that would be fun.
Remake his father's, because I mean, and honestly, it's like I felt so, you know, we did Carl Reiner's Summer Rental recently, or sorry, Summer School. And then we did Summer Rental. And when we did Summer School, when I rewatched Summer School, I felt like, oh, wow, I really enjoy this a lot more now. And with Summer Rental, I was just kind of like, yeah, okay. I'm surprised I really remember this well.
I mean, Summer School is a lot punchier because you have teenagers in the 80s. Plus, you are a school teacher who has taught summer school. So you have that connection with it. Whereas Summer Rental, you've never been in that type of situation before. And it's I am never in, I mean... Sure, of course.
Sunberg with an air cast on.
And this brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about is that, you know, growing up, we as a family, we are brothers. If someone's listening for the first time and didn't know that, we as a family, you know, we went on a handful of summer vacations, but they were usually to the same place for a few years in a row. We went to Sea Island, Georgia. A few times driving there. And I feel like the most memorable parts about those trips, at least for me, were the trip to get there. Our parents will argue that we spent the entire times, like you were saying before, looking at screens. We were looking at playing Game Boys or listening to our Walkmen. Which, I mean, that certainly was part of the experience, but also like going to south of the border, which I am trying to think about that place, but I'm sure it's probably very problematic and nothing that would...
Fireworks.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Fireworks and stereotypes and... Oh, yeah.
Yeah, lots of stereotypes.
Stuckies, going to Stuckies. Getting like a pecan roll.
Well, the other thing I remember about a trip to Sea Island was when we stopped at a hotel, maybe it was in like North Carolina or something. And this hotel, it was like attached to I want to say like a shopping mall with a movie theater in it where we saw the movie Stay Tuned. We saw
Stay Tuned there. We saw Hearts and Souls or Heart and Souls with Robert Downey. I'm pretty sure that, and I'm pretty sure this was all at that theater. I
just remember like wrong. A lot of colorful lights. Like it was a very different type of place that I'd ever been in before.
Yeah, and, well, it was a multiplex, and it was a multiplex before we really had a lot of multiplexes near us because, you know, we grew up in Union County, New Jersey. The Menlo Park multiplex didn't open until I think 93. The Mountainside multiplex opened in like 95 or 96. So when we're talking like, you know, 91, 90, Stay Tuned, you know, was 92. Multiplexes also like staying in a hotel that was like, you didn't have to leave the building to go into the mall and into the movie theater. I mean, that was amazing. It was groundbreaking.
Absolutely. And yeah, I remember seeing Stay Tuned, and I don't remember Heart and Souls, but Stay Tuned, I remember that whole experience.
I think we saw that one there. I might be like, I might be wrong about that. Like I had thought that we had seen The Fugitive there, but when I found my ticket stubs, I don't think so.
The truth came out. So yeah. What's also funny is while I was watching Summer Rental, you know, it's like raining and the family without John Candy are going to the movies. And at first I was like, oh, that's kind of weird to like go to a movie while you're on summer vacation. And it's like, that's exactly what we did.
We did that when it rained. We did that I remember doing that actually, like when we were in Sea Island. I remember it rained once, and you and Scott didn't come along on this, but those of us who had achieved teendom by 1991 went to go see Point Break.
Oh man.
At like this little like dinky shopping center like movie theater that's also like that's playing like second run movies, and it's kind of like the opposite of like, oh wow, look at all the lights and the giant posters,
right?
And, like giant 50-foot thing, Indiana Jones, and like this was just kind of like in the corner of like, you know, letters kind of falling off the marquee, and you know, really cheap. But I remember, yeah, we saw Point Break.
Pont Brack.
Pont Brack.
I don't know. Letters are falling off.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. That's
Pont
what I was
Brack.
talking about.
It's a French film about a bridge.
So I don't know. I that was kind of those were like my memories of our summer vacations. You know, it was, I don't even remember how long we were there, a week or two.
Yeah, I think it would be like a week.
Week and a half or something. And and you know, we went to the same place for a few years, and we went with other families that we were family friends with. And you know, and when I think about it now as a parent, I'm like, yeah, I understand why we went there. You know, one of the reasons is that there was all this stuff for like kids to go off and do like all day long. Like you weren't, I think you were already too old for this type of thing. But for me and Scott, you know, we would just kind of get sent off to go do all these activities with like
you went to camp,
other set of kids. Yeah, exactly. Who was also there. Yeah. So it's like, that's kind of a perfect situation there. So, but yeah, and very similarly in summer rental, there's supposed to be a nursery school where the youngest child went off to, but Mother Goose had closed.
Yeah. So I'll interject as we wrap up shop here on summer rental, but I will interject that I remember, and it was summer of 86. So might be a little foggy for your memory, but I remember that we like, or it was Grandma Seal, our grandmother, and Papa Milty, her husband. They rented, or like Mom and Elaine and Gail and all them like rented a beach house, a summer rental down by the Jersey Shore. And
right.
I remember they drove out because I remember the car with California plates. And I remember that when it rained, we went to the movies. We didn't all go to the movies. I went, I think, just with Grandma Seal, GMC, and Milton to see the Karate Kid Part 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I remembered that in summer rental, it was kind of a similar like vibe, like all those little houses kind of next to each other, and they're all pretty much just there for people to like, you know, sleep, eat, and everything. And like you're there to go to the beach.
Right.
So I remember that, and that's kind of the most similar thing. But like, you know, we grew up in New Jersey, and even though we didn't necessarily like, you know, rent a beach house for, you know, long periods of time or any periods of time really.
Right.
Like we still went down to, we knew people with beach houses and like, you know, it'd go down and like, so what you see in summer rental, it was not entirely unlike what you'd see down by the Jersey Shore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But probably the Jersey Shore would not have that like pan flute score to it.
I was just, it would be Bon Jovi.
Yeah. It'd be Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi, and repeat.
Yeah. Eddie and the Cruisers.
Yeah. So, Dan, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. We keep on doing this. We're talking about.
We're going to talk about Look Who's Talking about talking.
No, we're not. We're going to talk about The Crow.
I know.
On the next
yeah,
episode.
I wasn't saying we're talking about Look Who's Talking.
I know, but I'm getting us out of this little spiral. We're going to talk about The Crow.
Thank you. We're going to talk about The Crow, 1994.
Okay. I will say I have not seen The Crow. Yesterday, as I was flipping through stuff, I saw that it was streaming and I was like, maybe I'll watch The Crow, but didn't. Only thing I know about The Crow is that Brandon Lee died during the filming, and that's all I know.
Yep. And we'll talk more about it next week or next time. And by then, I'm sure you'll know a lot more about The Crow.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think it might be on Netflix or something. So if you have whatever streaming service it's on, feel free to check it out. And if you want to chime in and write to us at ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com, we'll be sure to read whatever you say on the show, unless you tell us, don't read this. This is for your eyes only.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be a weird thing to do. Why would you do that?
Especially if it's an email about the movie for your eyes only. But and I will say other ways, if you're looking for some of the movies that we're talking about, you're having trouble finding them on streaming services. We are big supporters of your local public library as not just a source for great reading and a quiet place, but a place you could get the movie A Quiet Place at your local library.
I bet you could. Yeah.
So that's where I went for summer rental. And
I always feel a little embarrassed when I go to take a movie out of the library. Like I should be getting books, and instead I'm getting Summer School.
Yeah, I don't know. Our tax dollars pay for us to have the freedom of choice. So whether we watch Summer School or we read things for Summer School.
When I was taking Summer School out from the library, some libraries, they have the actual discs like behind the counter somewhere. But when I went to go take out the DVD of Summer School, I brought up to the librarian and I was just like, oh, is the disc in there? And they just gave me the look of like, it's Summer School. Like, we're not going to go through all the trouble for Summer School.
Yeah.
It's in there, buddy. Don't worry about it.
See, from my library, I usually have to like kind of put a hold on things and have them sent over from another branch so I can walk in and it's on a shelf. And it has like, there's a kiosk where you can just kind of check out and scan your card, and I don't have to interact with humans. So there's a lot less shame.
Yeah. It's like, but there were humans that had to go through the troubles of like taking Disorderlies off the shelf. Not that that's available at any libraries. I'm 100% certain about that, but not that like there'd be a human that puts it in a car and drives it to a different location.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they see your name on the thing and just be like, man, if this Dan character ever crosses paths with me, I'm going to have some things to say.
Alicia's name is on the account. So
the perfect crime. All right. Well, anyway,
look, I teach high school in this town. So God forbid, like one of the kids walks in and they're like, so there's this slip for Mr. Wiener and it was on this like this police academy. I don't know.
Well, they shouldn't.
I don't need to go to the library for any of the police academy movies.
We all know that. I know before I said Disorderlies, I was going to actually reference like Rocky IV, and I was like, we all know that Dan didn't need to rent Rocky IV from a library.
No.
So
not at all. I just had to go to the living room.
So Dan, thank you so much for doing this show with me. It's a lot of fun. I'm really excited to do this actually in person with you when we are on our trip in about a week.
We're very excited. Yeah, we're going. We're going live. I guess we're going live from Hawaii.
That's right. We're going to be on Oahu, recording a podcast. And I'm trying right now. I've got a like a big safe bag, and I'm trying to figure out my like configuration to bring all the gear, but it's getting a special checked luggage situation.
Oh, okay. All right. Sweet. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to chatting about The Crow.
Yeah.
For our next episode.
Yeah. And just as my recording gear will have a good journey to Hawaii, y'all have a good journey from this show.
Absolutely. A good journey to all, and to all a good night.